Matthew Murray slammed his fist on the console of his damaged fighter as another blast from the Brunali warship vaporized his wingman. Their advanced energy weapons sliced through the Brunali's impenetrable armor like a spoon through soup. The massive space battle between the outmatched human fleet and the Brunali alien forces raged all around him. Matthew fearlessly engaged the enemy ships, bobbing and weaving through the chaos, but his weapons did nothing against their superior technology. "This is hopeless!" Matthew yelled over comms as he narrowly avoided another deadly beam. Alarms blared in his cockpit, shields at 5%. He was lucky to be alive. All around him, human ships burst into flames, torn apart by the relentless Brunali onslaught. The aliens' sleek black vessels seemed to absorb their attacks like a sponge. Nothing could touch them. With most of his squadron destroyed and systems failing, Matthew had no choice but to retreat from the massacre. He plotted a course for the nearby human outpost on Cygnus 4, praying it hadn't been overrun yet. As his battered ship limped away from the battle, Matthew slammed his fist again in frustration and despair. He had never seen the Brunali's armor shrug off attacks like that before. How were they supposed to fight against invincible ships? Unless the humans found a way to penetrate the Brunali's defenses, this would be a very short war, one that ended with humanity conquered and enslaved under the boots of merciless alien overlords. The stakes couldn't be higher. The fate of their entire species hung in the balance. Matthew's heart raced as he approached Cygnus 4, not knowing if he would find salvation or annihilation waiting for him there. With the Brunali's unstoppable advance, nowhere was safe anymore. All he could do was regroup with his people, shore up their last defenses, and pray for a miracle. Because without a way to breach that impenetrable alien armor, they were all as good as dead. Matthew Murray's heart pounded as he approached Cygnus 4, expecting to find the outpost in ruins, but instead, he saw a glimmer of hope. A small fleet of human ships, armed with strange new weapons. As soon as he landed, the base commander pulled him aside. "Lieutenant Murray, suit up. We've got a new toy for you to play with." The commander showed him to a hangar where techs were hurriedly mounting odd-looking cannons and missile pods to the fighters. Railguns, coil guns, kinetic warheads, they fire solid projectiles at extreme velocities. Intel suggests they might punch through the Brunali armor. Matthew ran his hand along the sleek barrel of a railgun, a grin spreading across his face. Let's see if these aliens can dodge old-fashioned bullets. Minutes later, he and his squadron rocketed out of the hangar, jam-packed with the new armaments. They charged headlong toward the Brunali fleet, weapons primed. The aliens opened fire, their energy beams crisscrossing space, but the humans juked and jinked, evading the deadly onslaught. "Let 'em have it, boys." Matthew squeezed the trigger, and his railgun roared to life. A hypersonic tungsten slug smashed into a Brunali frigate, piercing its hull and detonating inside. The alien ship bloomed into a ball of flame. Cheers erupted over the comms as the human weapons tore into the Brunali fleet. Powerful kinetic missiles shattered their armor. Railguns scythed through hulls, and shrapnel from coil guns shredded vital systems. The aliens reeled under the withering fusillade. Matthew weaved through the chaos, raking the enemy ships with fire. His blood sang with the thrill of long-awaited vengeance. The outpost's defenders joined the fray, and what once seemed like a hopeless slaughter transformed into a ferocious battle. But the Brunali refused to roll over. A trio of alien fighters fell on Matthew's tail, pummeling his shields with plasma. He jinked and rolled, trying to shake them, but they clung to him like hungry wolves. Gritting his teeth, Matthew threw his fighter into a wild corkscrew, G-forces crushing him into his seat. At the last second, he cut the engines and flipped end for end. The Brunali overshot him. Matthew squeezed the trigger, and kinetic rounds tore into their rears, shredding the aliens into scrap. As the battle raged, the Brunali commander adapted to the new threat. The alien ships pulled back, using their range advantage to keep the human fighters at bay. Deadly drones swarmed out to hunt down Matthew and his squadron. "They're trying to keep us at arm's length." Matthew dodged and weaved as energy beams and drone fire stitched the space around him. "We've got to get in close. Hit him where it hurts. An idea struck him. The outpost was surrounded by an asteroid belt, a hazardous obstacle for ships, but the perfect cover for fighters. All units, follow me into the rocks. Matthew plunged into the asteroid field, his squadron close behind. The Brunali drones pursued, but the tight confines and unpredictable terrain worked against them. One by one, they smashed into tumbling boulders or fell victim to the humans' expert flying. Using the asteroids as cover, Matthew led his squadron in close to the alien fleet. They popped out among the Brunali ships like wolves among sheep, ravaging them with brutal point-blank fire. At the heart of the alien formation loomed a monstrous dreadnought, its hull overflowing with weapons. Raxor's flagship. Matthew gritted his teeth. If they could take it out, the Brunali would have no choice but to withdraw. All fighters! On me! We're going for the flagship! Matthew gunned his thrusters and charged straight toward the behemoth, weaving madly through a storm of defensive fire. A high-yield kinetic missile hung under his wing, a parting gift from the outpost's munitions depot. Plasma scorched his hull, and alarms screamed in his ears, but Matthew held his course. The dreadnought filled his view, its hull looming like a steel cliff. At the last second, he wrenched the stick, flipping his fighter end over end in a desperate hammerhead turn. He had a split second to aim as he passed over the flagship's bridge. Matthew mashed the trigger and the kinetic warhead leapt from his wing. Time seemed to slow as it streaked toward the alien hull, a bullet the size of a truck. The missile struck the bridge head-on and detonated, a miniature supernova of light and shrapnel. The dreadnought's command center vanished in a maelstrom of fire and debris. Explosions rippled across its hull as secondary detonations gutted the mighty warship from within. Direct hit! The flagship is hit! The Brunali fleet fell into disarray, suddenly leaderless. Energy beams licked out wildly as the aliens lost coordination. Seizing the opportunity, the human forces pressed the attack. Matthew landed blow after punishing blow, his cannons blazing relentlessly. All around him, Brunali ships splintered and burned under the onslaught. What had once been an invincible armada crumbled into a tattered remnant. A handful of alien ships flashed and vanished, fleeing into the safety of null space. The rest lay broken and burning amid the outpost's defense perimeter, shattered hulks drifting aimlessly. The impossible had happened. Against adversity, the humans had won. Wild cheers and whoops of victory filled the comms. Battered but triumphant, the human fleet limped back to Cygnus 4 for repairs and rearmament. Matthew and his squadron were welcomed back as heroes, the saviors of the outpost. News of the Brunali defeat spread like wildfire. Across human space, a surge of hope and grit replaced despair. They suddenly had a chance, a way to fight back against the alien onslaught. The human military moved quickly to refit their ships and churn out projectile weapons. There would be a reckoning for the Brunali's brutality. For Raxor and the alien leadership, it was a staggering blow. Their aura of invincibility lay shattered along with their ships. But as the shock wore off, their eyes narrowed with cold calculation. The humans had surprised them. That would not happen again. Already, Raxor ordered his scientists to devise new armor, new shields, new countermeasures for the humans' weapons. The road ahead would be long and bloody. Humanity had struck a mighty blow, but the Brunali were far from defeated. But now, at least, there was hope. Matthew and his fellow pilots would carry the fight to the enemy, hounding them across the stars until Earth and all its colonies were safe. No matter what it took, they would find a way to win. The first battle was over, but the real war was just beginning. The taste of victory at Cygnus 4 lingered, but humanity hungered for more. With their new weapons proving effective, the military brass saw an opportunity to strike back hard. They set their sights on a juicy target, the Brunali shipyard in the Kepler system. Matthew Murray, fresh off his heroics and sporting a shiny new squadron leader badge, led the charge. As his fighter rocketed out of the carrier's launch tube, he felt a mix of excitement and dread. This was their chance to really hurt the Brunali, but he knew the cost would be high. The human fleet burst out of warp, their sudden appearance catching the shipyard's defenders with their pants down. Matthew's voice crackled over the comms. "All units, weapons hot, light 'em up!" His squadron dove into the fray, railguns spitting hypervelocity slugs that tore through Brunali armor seamlessly. Matthew weaved through a cloud of debris, closing to point-blank range with a Brunali cruiser. He squeezed the trigger, and his coil gun ripped the alien ship's guts out. But the element of surprise didn't last long. A massive Brunali battle group warped in, led by the towering form of Raxor's flagship. Matthew's stomach dropped as he saw the sheer number of enemy ships. "Evasive maneuvers," he barked, yanking his stick hard to port as energy beams lashed out. The space around him lit up like a laser light show as Brunali weapons fire filled the void. Matthew's wingman took a direct hit, his fighter spinning out of control. "I'm hit! Systems critical!" In that split second, Matthew had to choose, press the attack or save his friend. The shipyard's reactor was right there, ripe for the taking. But one look at his wingman's mangled craft made the decision for him. "I'm coming for you, buddy." Matthew broke formation, interposing his fighter between the crippled ship and the incoming Brunali fire. His deflector shields flared as they absorbed hit after hit, meant for his wingman. "Get clear!" Matthew shouted, gritting his teeth as his own systems began to fail under the barrage. He juked and jinked, drawing the Brunali fire away until his wingman limped to safety. But Matthew paid the price. His engine sputtered and died, leaving him drifting toward the shipyard. Warning klaxons blared as his hull integrity dropped to critical levels. There was only one play left. Matthew punched the eject button just as his fighter slammed into the shipyard's central reactor. The impact set off a chain reaction, and Matthew watched from his tumbling escape pod as the entire facility went up in a massive fireball. Elation at their victory quickly turned to dread as Matthew realized his situation. Adrift in space with oxygen running low, he could only hope someone would find him before it was too late. Back on New Providence, Emily Murray paced nervously in her living room, their young son asleep on the couch. The vid screen blared updates about the attack, but there was no word on Matthew's fate. Emily's hands shook as she clutched a picture of her husband. She'd already lost so much to this war, she couldn't bear to lose him too. Hours ticked by as human search and rescue teams combed through the debris field. Just when all seemed lost, a faint signal pinged on their sensors. They found Matthew barely conscious in his battered pod, rushing him to the nearest medical frigate. As doctors worked frantically to stabilize him, news of Matthew's sacrifice spread across human space. In bars, homes, and military bases, people raised glasses to the pilot who'd struck such a decisive blow against the Brunali. But in his flagship, Raxor seethed with rage. The loss of the shipyard was a humiliation he wouldn't soon forget. As Matthew lay recuperating in his hospital bed, hailed as a hero, the Brunali leader plotted his revenge. The real war was just beginning. The destruction of the Brunali shipyard sent shockwaves through the alien empire. On the Brunali homeworld, the High Council convened in their grand chamber, a cavernous space of angular architecture and glowing panels. Raxor stood before them, his posture rigid but his eyes burning with barely contained fury. "This human victory was a fluke," Raxor insisted, his voice echoing off the chamber walls. "Their primitive projectile weapons are nothing more than a temporary setback." The lead counselor leaned forward, fixing Raxor with a piercing gaze. "A fluke that cost us our most vital shipyard and thousands of lives. Your arrogance blinds you, Raxor. These humans have proven far more resourceful than you anticipated." Raxor opened his mouth to argue, but the counselor cut him off with a wave of his hand. "You are hereby stripped of your fleet command. Your new assignment is to lead our countermeasures research initiative. Do not fail us again." Seething with resentment but determined to prove himself, Raxor threw himself into the work. He assembled a team of the brightest Brunali minds, poring over captured human weapons and running endless simulations. Meanwhile, aboard the human carrier Intrepid, Matthew Murray sat propped up in his hospital bed, surrounded by holographic displays. His body was still healing, but his mind was razor-sharp. "Here," Matthew said, pointing to a cluster of Brunali supply depots. "We hit these in rapid succession, in and out before they can react." Admiral Chen nodded approvingly. "Risky, but if we pull it off, we'll cripple their logistics in that entire sector." Matthew's strategies proved devastatingly effective. Human strike teams darted in and out of Brunali space, leaving destruction in their wake. They exploited gaps in the alien defenses that the new projectile weapons had exposed. But in his secret laboratory, Raxer was making progress. He watched as a test projectile slammed into their latest energy barrier prototype, dissipating harmlessly. A triumphant grin spread across his face. "Begin mass production immediately," he ordered. The next major clash came in orbit around Tarsus 7, a mineral-rich moon both sides coveted. Matthew stood on the bridge of the flagship Excalibur, watching as the human fleet engaged the Brunali defenders. "All ships, open fire," Matthew commanded. A barrage of projectiles streaked towards the Brunali ships, but instead of tearing through hulls, they splashed harmlessly against shimmering energy fields. Matthew's eyes widened in shock. "What the hell?" The Brunali counterattack was swift and merciless. Energy beams lanced out, slicing through human ships like paper. Alarms blared as the Excalibur took multiple hits. "We've lost engines," a crewman shouted. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 7. Matthew gripped the command console, watching helplessly as his fleet was torn apart. "All ships, fall back! Emergency retreat!" As he coordinated the evacuation, a support beam came crashing down. Matthew shoved a junior officer clear, but couldn't move in time himself. The beam pinned him, and everything went black. Days later, in a hospital on New Earth, Emily Murray sat vigil by her husband's bedside. Matthew lay still, machines beeping softly as they monitored his comatose state. Emily clutched his hand, fighting back tears. "Come back to us, Matt. We need you." In the halls of Human Military Command, grim-faced officers pored over reports from the Tarsus 7 disaster. Their wonder weapons had been neutralized, their greatest tactician incapacitated. For the first time since the introduction of projectile weapons, genuine fear gripped the human forces. And on the Brunali homeworld, Raxer stood before the High Council once more. This time, his head was held high, his voice full of confidence. "The humans are vulnerable," he declared. "Their projectile weapons are useless against our new shields. Now is the time to strike, to crush their worlds and end this war once and for all." The lead counselor considered for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well, Raxer. You have your offensive. Do not waste this opportunity." Raxer bowed, a predatory grin spreading across his face. The Brunali war machine rumbled to life, ready to unleash its full might upon humanity. The sterile hum of medical equipment filled the hospital room as Matthew Murray lay motionless, his body battered and broken from the catastrophic defeat at Tarsus 7. Monitors beeped steadily, tracking his vital signs as he fought for survival in a comatose state. Outside the hospital, chaos reigned. The streets of New Earth's capital teemed with panicked civilians, their faces etched with fear as they rushed to stockpile supplies and seek shelter. Emergency sirens wailed, their haunting cry a constant reminder of the impending doom. In the orbiting defense stations, human military personnel worked frantically to shore up their defenses. But with each passing hour, their efforts seemed more futile. Commander Sarah Chen stared at the tactical display, her eyes sunken from lack of sleep. "Another outpost gone dark, sir," a young ensign reported, his voice cracking. Chen nodded grimly. "That's the third one this week. How many ships made it out?" "None, sir. The Brunali shields. Our weapons couldn't even scratch them." In the grand chamber of the Brunali High Council, Raxer stood tall, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. "The humans are defenseless," he declared, gesturing to a holographic display of Earth. Their pitiful projectile weapons are useless against our new shields. Now is the time to crush them once and for all. The lead counselor leaned forward, fixing Raxer with a piercing gaze. Very well, Raxer. You have your invasion force. Do not fail us again. As the massive Brunali armada entered Earth's orbit, the sky lit up with the hellish glow of orbital bombardment. Energy beams lanced down from the alien ships, vaporizing buildings and leaving smoking craters in their wake. In the heart of the human command center, frantic voices filled the air as reports of destruction poured in from around the globe. Admiral Jackson smacked his palm on the command table. Damn it, we need options. Someone get me a direct line to the Brunali. Maybe we can negotiate a ceasefire. But Raxer's response was swift and merciless. The alien commander's face appeared on the main view screen, his features twisted in a snarl of contempt. There will be no negotiations, humans. You will surrender unconditionally, or we will reduce your world to ashes. As hope dwindled, a miracle occurred in Matthew Murray's hospital room. His eyes fluttered open, consciousness flooding back in a rush of pain and disorientation. A nurse gasped, rushing to his side. Mr. Murray, can you hear me? Matthew's voice came out as a hoarse whisper. What's happening? The nurse's eyes filled with tears. Earth is under attack. The Brunali, they're everywhere. Ignoring the screaming protests of his battered body, Matthew struggled to sit up. Get me to the command center, now. Minutes later, Matthew was wheeled into the heart of Earth's defense network, his body weak but his mind razor-sharp. Admiral Jackson's eyes widened in shock. Murray? How the hell? Matthew cut him off. No time. I have a plan, but you're not going to like it. As Matthew laid out his desperate strategy, silence fell over the command center. It was audacious, borderline insane, but as they watched another city fall to Brunali bombardment, they knew it was their only hope. Admiral Jackson nodded grimly. Do it. In a hidden hangar beneath the command center, a sleek black ship hummed to life. Matthew eased himself into the pilot's seat, gritting his teeth against the pain. A team of elite pilots strapped themselves in behind him. This is Phantom Leader, Matthew's voice crackled over the comms. We're go for launch. As the hangar doors slid open, Matthew took a deep breath. He thought of Emily, of their son, of everything he stood to lose if he failed. The stealth ship rocketed into the chaos of Earth's orbit, weaving through debris and ducking past Brunali patrols. Matthew's hands danced over the controls, guiding them towards the looming bulk of the Brunali flagship. This is it, team, he said quietly. Let's save the world. With that, they plunged into the heart of the enemy fleet, carrying humanity's last, desperate hope.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.